Welcome to Murder and Mystery HQ. Let's get into it.
On February 9th, a 21-year-old nursing student named Maura Murray vanished after a car accident on that dark road. Neighbors heard a loud crash and rushed to help. One offered to call the police, but she declined, saying she had already made contact. Then, in the span of mere minutes, Maura was gone, leaving her damaged vehicle abandoned by the snow-packed roadside. Details emerged like scattered fragments. Earlier that day, she emailed professors about a sudden family emergency, one that never truly existed. She withdrew a small sum of money from an ATM, and her dorm room was left in a curious state, with personal belongings neatly packed. Yet no footprints trailed from the crash scene, and no credible lead ever answered the question: where did Maura Murray go that night? Today, nearly 2 decades later, the sign marking Haverhill's exit remains much the same. The mountains still loom in quiet witness, blanketed by snow each winter, and the roadway twists through lonely stretches that see little traffic after sundown. Yet for those who remember, the sight of a black Saturn sedan on the side of Route 112 is impossible to forget. A single moment in time, the flicker of headlights in the dark, birthed endless questions with no resolution. What draws so many people to revisit this case isn't a simple desire for gossip or speculation. It is the profound sense of unfinished business, of a bright young student who disappeared in a flash, leaving those who knew her, along with strangers who became fascinated by her story, searching for an answer they cannot find. It's a story about the haunting silence that follows an event with no conclusion, and the weight that lingers in the air when logic fails to illuminate the truth. Welcome to Murder and Mystery HQ. I'm your host, and over the next few minutes we'll explore a story that has confounded investigators, drawn countless theories, and haunted a family searching for answers. On this channel, we focus on real events, unresolved cases where the truth lurks just beyond our reach. By diving into verifiable facts and first-hand accounts, we strive to shed light on riddles that challenge even the most seasoned detectives. Throughout our investigations, you'll hear from people who lived through these experiences, along with the documented evidence they left behind. From missing persons who vanished without a clue to strange coincidences that defy explanation, every case we discuss reflects a life forever changed and a community searching for closure. In today's episode, we focus on one particularly puzzling disappearance, the case of Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student who embarked on a journey one cold winter evening in 2004 and never returned. First, we'll recount the critical moments leading to her absence. Then, we'll review the extensive search efforts, the conflicting accounts, and the threads of evidence that leave more questions than answers. But that's just the beginning. We'll also examine the context around why this investigation has captured the attention of so many online communities and armchair detectives. Could fresh leads or advanced investigative methods finally bring clarity to what happened on that remote New Hampshire road? Or does this story remain bound by the shroud it's worn for nearly 2 decades? Stay with us, and you'll uncover the small details that might be the key to understanding this mystery. Along the way, we'll touch on how certain cases gain widespread attention and why some remain unheard in the public eye. We aim to highlight the voices of those who keep hope alive, even when facts are scarce and obstacles immense.
Warning: viewers' discretion is advised.
It was the evening of February 9th, 2004. Temperatures hovered below freezing, and a blanket of snow covered the quiet mountain roads of Haverhill, New Hampshire. At approximately 7:27 p.m., a black Saturn sedan left the roadway and crashed into a snowbank along Route 112, a narrow 2-lane stretch bordered by thick woods and long driveways hidden by trees. It was the kind of place where every car is noticed, especially one that doesn't belong. A neighbor, Butch Atwood, a local school bus driver, spotted the car as he returned home. He pulled up beside it and saw a young woman, later identified as Maura Murray, standing near the driver's side. She appeared uninjured but visibly shaken. He asked if she needed help. She declined, calmly telling him that she had already called AAA. Butch, concerned, returned home just a few hundred feet away and phoned the police anyway. By 7:46 p.m., less than 10 minutes later, the first officer arrived. The Saturn was still there, with the nose buried in the snow. But Maura was gone. What the responding officer found only deepened the mystery. The car doors were locked. The windshield was cracked. Inside the Saturn were several of Maura's belongings: printed directions to Vermont accommodations, a box of wine, her college textbooks, and a stuffed animal. The vehicle itself had suffered front-end damage, but was still operable. Near the car, no footprints were found in the surrounding snow. None leading away, none approaching. Snow had fallen earlier that day, but conditions were stable at the time of the crash. Investigators noted a curious detail. A torn rag had been stuffed into the tailpipe of the vehicle. Some speculated it was an attempt to prevent the car from starting, a tactic that could point to foul play or to someone trying to conceal signs of smoke. There was also an open container of alcohol, suggesting Maura may have been drinking. In the days before her disappearance, she had purchased alcohol from a local store, and a sealed bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream was found in the car. However, that detail, like many others, only raised more questions than it answered. The area around the crash site was searched by police and tracking dogs that night and in the days that followed, but no scent trail was ever found. It was as if she had simply evaporated into the cold air. In the hours that followed, law enforcement questioned locals, canvassed nearby homes, and retraced the route Maura might have taken. But the timeline didn't make sense. Between the crash and the arrival of police, there was only a 7-minute window in which Maura could have left, on foot in sub-zero temperatures on a dark rural road. No blood was found, no sign of a struggle, no vehicle tracks besides her own. Yet Maura Murray was nowhere to be seen. In the years since that night, speculation has run rampant. Did Maura accept a ride from a stranger? Was someone following her? Or did she intend to disappear all along, planning every move right up until the final moment? There are those who believe she was abducted. Others are convinced she staged the crash to start a new life, far away from the pressures she was under. But with no witnesses, no confirmed sightings, and no trace of her ever found, we're left with a chilling question. Did someone pick her up that night? Or was Maura Murray trying to vanish on purpose? Long before the crash on Route 112, Maura Murray was known as driven, intelligent, and fiercely independent. A promising student athlete from Hanson, Massachusetts, she began her academic journey at West Point, the prestigious U.S. military academy. There, she studied chemical engineering, a demanding path that few pursued lightly. But by her sophomore year, something changed. She transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where she enrolled in the nursing program. It was a transition that seemed logical on the surface, but some believe it marked the first signs of strain. She continued to excel academically, yet cracks had begun to show beneath the surface. In the weeks before her disappearance, Maura's behavior had become complicated. During a shift at her campus job with campus security, she experienced what her supervisor later described as an emotional breakdown. She received a phone call, its content still unknown, and after hanging up, she reportedly broke into tears. When asked what was wrong, she simply replied, "My sister." But later, her sister would claim she wasn't the one on the other end of the line. Whether that call had anything to do with her decision to leave is still unknown. What happened next is a sequence of choices that have puzzled even the most seasoned investigators. On February 9th, the day she vanished, Maura sent an email to her professors stating that there had been a death in the family and that she would be away for a week. But there was no death. It was a fabrication. She then proceeded to withdraw $280 from her bank account, almost all the money she had. She stopped at an ATM where surveillance footage showed her alone. Back at her dorm, she packed up her room. Her belongings were neatly organized into boxes, and a printed email to her boyfriend was left on top. It read like a goodbye, or perhaps a confession, but it stopped short of explaining anything directly. She also printed MapQuest directions. Remember, this was 2004, leading toward Vermont. Why that destination? No one truly knows. There was no known friend or family member waiting for her there. She didn't make a hotel reservation. She didn't tell her boyfriend or family what she was doing. Her actions were deliberate, but the motivation remains hidden. Some have theorized that Maura was trying to escape mounting pressures, academic stress, personal struggles, a recent incident involving a credit card. Others argue it wasn't a spontaneous act. It was planned, methodical. She packed with intention. She left nothing overtly behind to suggest danger, and she didn't hesitate at any point during her movements that day. She made no phone calls to anyone she trusted. She said goodbye to no one. She left quietly, as if she expected to return, or as if she never planned to. Was she running from something, or was she simply leaving? But there's one question that still shrouds the entire case. Did Maura tell someone where she was going? If so, has that person stayed silent all these years? There were no outgoing calls or texts to friends that we know of. No confirmed messages giving away her destination. But it's hard to believe that someone could plan a trip so thoroughly and not confide in anyone. If someone out there does know what she was running toward or away from, they've kept it secret for 2 decades. In the early hours after Maura Murray's disappearance, the reaction was quiet. A few locals speculated that the young woman had simply wandered into the woods. Others believed she would turn up soon, cold, embarrassed, but safe. But her father, Fred Murray, felt something much darker had happened. Fred arrived in Haverhill the next morning, having driven hundreds of miles overnight. He was met not with urgency, but uncertainty. Police at the time didn't declare Maura missing. They treated it as a young adult choosing to walk away. That assessment would shape how the investigation unfolded and, some argue, how critical time was lost. Fred, however, wasted none of it. He began distributing missing person flyers immediately, speaking with anyone who had seen the car, knocking on doors, demanding action. In the days that followed, local authorities joined with search and rescue teams to canvass the area. Helicopters flew overhead. K9 units tracked the woods. Volunteers combed frozen backroads on foot, but there was no trace of Maura. Not even a dropped glove, a phone, or a trail in the snow. Every lead collapsed. Every theory ended where the road did. The community stepped up, but the system around them faltered. There's a timeline in missing persons cases that professionals call the golden hours. The first 24 hours are often the most important. It's the window when evidence is fresh, when witnesses still remember details, and when a person is most likely to be found. In Maura's case, that window closed without resolution. From the start, jurisdictional confusion clouded the investigation. The Haverhill Police Department initially led the search, but without a clear understanding of where Maura had gone, or if a crime had occurred, the urgency was absent. Soon, the New Hampshire State Police took over, but not before crucial hours passed. Inconsistent communication followed. A press release wasn't issued immediately. The public wasn't warned that a young woman was missing. No statewide alert was issued. By the time word began to spread, the snowy roads and surrounding forest had been walked over, plowed through, or iced over again, potentially destroying evidence. Tips began trickling in. Some said they saw a woman walking quickly down Route 112. Others swore they spotted her at a rest stop, confused and cold. One report claimed she had gotten into a car with an unknown driver, but every rumored sighting ended with the same phrase, unconfirmed. And the car itself, Maura's Saturn, was not immediately processed as a crime scene. It was towed, then returned to Fred days later. No forensic sweep was conducted in the critical early hours. To this day, some wonder, was evidence lost, discarded, or simply overlooked? Among the many tips received by law enforcement, one stood out. An anonymous call to the state police tip line claimed Maura had been abducted. The caller provided no details, no name, no location, no motive. The call was traced, but by then it was too late. The person behind the voice was never found, and no link to Maura was ever confirmed. Was it a prank? Or was it someone trying to hint at a truth they couldn't speak aloud? To this day, that call remains unresolved. A single moment of possibility, lost in the noise.
Hit the like button if these cases keep you on the edge of your seat. And let's keep going. There's more to this story. And maybe, just maybe, we're closer than we think.
By the mid-2000s, Maura Murray's disappearance was no longer just a local story. It had become a digital obsession. As time went on and official updates became scarce, a new wave of investigators emerged. Not from law enforcement agencies, but from laptops, living rooms, and message boards. Her case became one of the first to gain massive traction online. Websites like WebSleuth's early blogs and dedicated forums began dissecting the timeline. Every detail was analyzed: phone records, timestamps, photographs of the crash site. No clue was too small, no theory too extreme. By the early 2010s, Reddit threads dedicated to Maura were drawing thousands of comments. Podcasts like Missing Maura Murray gave the case a new voice, amplifying it to an international audience. The case wasn't just a cold file anymore. It was a living, breathing discussion, shaped by collective speculation and fueled by frustration. Some hailed the digital involvement as a form of modern justice. Others warned that the blurring line between public interest and personal privacy risked clouding the investigation itself. Some believe Maura was overwhelmed by academics, personal relationships, and legal trouble, and decided to walk away from it all. Her careful packing, printed directions, and sudden departure seemed to support this. The alcohol, the email to her professors, the goodbye note on top of the boxes. It felt intentional, but then why crash? Why disappear only minutes before help arrived? Others argue she was abducted, a predator driving by, someone who noticed her standing alone on Route 112 and seized the opportunity. The short timeline between the crash and police arrival seems to fit. One theory suggests she accepted a ride, willingly or under pressure, and never got the chance to return. A less common but deeply sensitive theory suggests that Maura may have been in such distress that she took her own life, but no remains have ever been found. No suicide note, and her family strongly rejects this theory. Then there are the more obscure clues. The rag in the tailpipe, for instance. Her father, Fred, later said he placed it there himself to stop the car from leaking smoke. But online investigators have speculated, was it a way to stall the car intentionally, or something far more sinister? And then there were local rumors of strange behavior among nearby residents, of uncooperative witnesses, of a house near the crash site that was later searched with cadaver dogs. But these threads always stopped short of concrete evidence. Despite the absence of solid leads, the years that followed Maura Murray's disappearance were filled with sightings, dozens of them. Some came from nearby New Hampshire towns. Others reached as far as Quebec and even into Canada's western provinces, where travelers swore they saw a woman matching her description. There was one report that stood out. A truck stop attendant claimed to have seen a disoriented woman who looked like Maura, alone, nervous, and refusing help. But by the time investigators followed up, the woman was gone and no trace remained. The sighting, like so many others, ended in silence. These moments, fleeting and unverified, became part of the wider folklore surrounding her disappearance. Was Maura running, hiding, or were these nothing more than misidentifications fueled by public desperation and blurred memory? In 2006, 2 years after her disappearance, law enforcement received a tip about a house not far from the crash site. The owners had acted strangely, some said. Dogs brought in to search the property alerted in the basement, but nothing was found. Years later, after pressure from the public and Maura's family, that same house was searched again, this time with ground-penetrating radar. What investigators discovered was inconclusive. A disturbance in the soil, yes, but no human remains. No evidence linked to Maura. another dead end. Many who once stepped forward with confidence began to pull back. Witnesses recanted, theories unraveled. And as the years wore on, the volume of speculation grew louder, but the facts remained the same. No new physical evidence has been found since the night Maura disappeared. No wallet, no backpack, no phone. In an age where surveillance cameras track our every move and digital footprints lead everywhere, her trail was wiped clean.
Over the last several months, that home has become the target of increased speculation by a variety of private citizens. Some private citizens stated that they believed that there was a body, in fact, in that home, in the basement. And really that theory was based on a variety of different pieces of evidence, including a search that was done by a couple of dogs that belonged to private citizens, and a search that was done with something called ground-penetrating radar.
Why would someone vanish without a trace? And why, after all this time, has no one spoken up? If this was a planned escape, why has no message come through? If it was a crime, why has no guilt leaked into the open? The answers may still be out there, but only if the silence is finally broken. Yet even in the silence, the question remains, can this case still be solved? We are living in a different world now. A world of satellite imaging, cell tower triangulation, digital footprints that can be resurrected, and forensic tools we never dreamed of in 2004. Genetic genealogy, the same technique that cracked the Golden State Killer case, has become a beacon of hope for cold cases. Could an undiscovered trace of DNA buried in that Saturn, or held unknowingly by someone who once searched the area, still hold the answer? Then there's the human factor, the memory that won't rest, the witness who's never come forward, the person who knows something but didn't think it mattered, or couldn't bear to speak up. Time can silence voices, but sometimes it gives people the strength to speak. So we ask, could someone watching this right now hold the final clue? Maybe it's a name, a place, a detail that seemed insignificant. Maybe it's something you overheard, or someone you once knew. Maybe it's buried in your memory, waiting for the right moment to matter. The case of Maura Murray isn't just a mystery to be solved. It's a life that deserves closure, a family that deserves peace, and a reminder that even the most impenetrable silence can sometimes be broken.
It was May 14th, 2008. At 1:54 a.m., a panicked phone call reached the Swanson home. "Dad, help! I went in the ditch." Those were the words. 19-year-old Brandon Swanson spoke from somewhere in the vast Minnesota countryside. For the next 47 minutes, his father tried desperately to locate him in the darkness. Then came the words, "Oh shit," followed by silence. Brandon Swanson vanished without a trace that night, leaving behind only questions that remain unanswered to this day. Brandon had been celebrating the end of his spring semester at Minnesota West Community and Technical College with friends in Canby. Driving home alone to marshal along the rural back roads, something went wrong. He believed he was near Lynn, and his Chevrolet Lumina somehow ended up in a ditch. When Brian Swanson, Brandon's father, drove out to find his son, confusion only deepened. Brandon flashed his headlights, but his father saw nothing. They were somehow searching in completely different locations, separated by miles of dark Minnesota farmland. The final call lasted 47 minutes as Brandon described walking toward what he believed were the lights of Lind. Cell phone tower data later revealed he was actually near Porter, Minnesota, approximately 25 miles from where he thought he was. What caused him to suddenly exclaim, "Oh shit," before the line went dead has haunted investigators and his family for years. When dawn broke, searchers found Brandon's abandoned car near a field approach off County Road 15, but no sign of Brandon himself. Extensive searches covering thousands of acres over many months yielded nothing. No clothing, no personal effects, no Brandon. In the spring of 2008, Brandon Swanson was living the typical life of a 19-year-old finding his way in the world. With a lean build, short brown hair, and an easy smile, Brandon was known among friends and family for his easygoing nature and passion for the outdoors. Brandon had just completed his first year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby, a small town of barely 1,700 residents nestled in the farmlands of Yellow Medicine County. He was studying wind energy technology, a forward-thinking choice for a young man from rural Minnesota. His instructors described him as dedicated and thoughtful, with a mechanical aptitude that served him well in his chosen field. Brandon was always tinkering with something, recalls one of his instructors. He had this natural curiosity about how things worked. When other students might give up on a problem, Brandon would stay late, working until he figured it out. His parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, had always maintained a close relationship with their son. Living in Marshall, Minnesota, about 30 miles from Canby, they spoke with Brandon several times a week. Unlike many teenagers who drift from their parents during these transitional years, Brandon remained connected to his family. "We were always close," Annette Swanson would later tell reporters, her voice catching as she spoke about her son in the past tense. "He would call just to chat about his day or ask for advice. That's why it wasn't unusual when he called that night. He trusted us to help when he needed it." Brian Swanson, Brandon's father, shared similar sentiments about their relationship. "Brandon and I could talk about anything. We went fishing together whenever we could. He was becoming a man, but he wasn't too proud to still be our son." May 13th, 2008 began as an ordinary Tuesday for Brandon. He attended his final classes of the semester at Minnesota West. According to classmates, he was in good spirits, looking forward to summer break and discussing plans to return in the fall. As classes ended that afternoon, Brandon made plans to celebrate with friends. The end of spring semester marked a milestone worth commemorating. Several classmates gathered at a friend's home in Canby, a small, informal get-together to mark the occasion. One of Brandon's friends at the gathering later recounted, "It was nothing wild, just a few of us hanging out, listening to music, talking about summer plans. Brandon had a couple of beers, but nobody was out of control. It was just a normal night." Witnesses at the gathering consistently described Brandon as being in a positive mood. He mentioned looking forward to summer employment opportunities and spending time outdoors during the warmer months. There were no signs of distress, no unusual behavior, no conflicts with anyone present. Brandon stayed at the gathering until approximately 10:30 p.m., when he decided it was time to make the 30-mile drive back to his parents' home in Marshall. This drive along the rural highways was familiar to him. He had made the trip between Canby and Marshall countless times during his first year of college. "I remember him saying goodbye, nothing dramatic," recalled Karsten. "He just said he was heading home and would catch up with everyone later. That was it, the last time any of us saw him." Some of Brandon's friends at the party added, "He seemed completely normal when he left. We made plans to meet up later that week. There was nothing in his behavior that would make you think anything was wrong." Receipts and witness accounts confirm Brandon stopped for gas at a station in Canby at approximately 10:45 p.m. before beginning his drive home. Security footage shows him paying for fuel and purchasing a bottle of water. The clerk who served him reported nothing unusual about the interaction. By all accounts, Brandon Swanson was simply a young man ending a night of mild celebration, making his way home along familiar roads. The spring night was clear but dark in the rural countryside, with temperatures in the mid-50s. Cool, but not dangerously cold. What should have been a routine 40-minute drive turned into something else entirely. Sometime after midnight, Brandon's 1994 Chevrolet Lumina veered off the road and became stuck in a ditch. The exact time and circumstances of this event remain unclear, as no witnesses observed the incident. At 1:54 a.m. on May 14th, Brandon placed the call that would be the beginning of his mysterious disappearance. His first words to his father Brian were straightforward. "Dad, help. I went in the ditch." These final normal moments of Brandon Swanson's known life, a college student calling his father for help after a minor car mishap, give no indication of the perplexing mystery that was about to unfold. A mystery that continues to haunt his family, law enforcement, and the community of southwestern Minnesota to this day. Little did anyone know that this routine call home would mark the beginning of one of Minnesota's most baffling missing persons cases, and that Brandon Swanson would never be seen or heard from again. As the digital clock in Brandon Swanson's 1994 Chevrolet Lumina approached midnight on May 13th, he was navigating the darkened rural highways of southwestern Minnesota. The roads between Canby and Marshall were familiar to him. But at night, the landscape transformed into an indistinguishable tapestry of fields and distant farmhouse lights. The exact route Brandon took that night remains a subject of intense scrutiny. Investigators believe he may have chosen to take back roads rather than the more direct Highway 68. This decision, seemingly insignificant at the time, would later complicate search efforts immensely. What we know with certainty is that Brandon's journey home did not go as planned. At some point, his vehicle left the roadway and became stuck. There were no signs of collision, no evidence of another vehicle involved, just a car that had veered off course and could not be driven out. At 1:54 a.m. on May 14th, Brandon placed a call to his home in Marshall. His father, Brian Swanson, answered the phone to hear his son's voice on the other end. "Dad, help! I went in the ditch," Brandon said. According to Brian Swanson's later accounts, Brandon sounded frustrated, but not panicked. This wasn't an emergency call. It was a son asking his father for assistance with what seemed like a minor inconvenience. Brandon believed he knew exactly where he was, near the small town of Lind, southwest of Marshall. He was totally calm, Brian would later recall. He told me he was just outside of Lind and needed a ride. It seemed straightforward. Go pick up my son who'd had a minor accident. I had no reason to think anything more of it. Brian and Annette Swanson immediately got into their vehicle to rescue their son. They drove to the outskirts of Lind, precisely where Brandon had indicated he would be. But upon arriving at the location, they found no sign of Brandon or his car. "We were driving around Lind, and I told Brandon to flash his lights so we could see where he was," Brian explained. "He said he was flashing them, but we couldn't see anything." That's when the first hint of confusion set in. What followed was a series of increasingly perplexing exchanges. Brandon insisted he could see the lights of Lind. Brian insisted they were in Lind and could see no sign of Brandon's vehicle. Both father and son were becoming frustrated, each believing the other was somehow mistaken. "I know where I am," Brandon reportedly told his father. "I can see the lights of Lind right in front of me." The phone call continued as Brian and Annette circled the area, with Brandon providing what he believed were helpful landmarks. But nothing matched up. Every description Brandon gave seemed to lead nowhere. During this time, Brandon made a decision that would further complicate the situation. Rather than staying with his vehicle, as safety experts universally recommend, he began walking toward what he believed were the lights of Lind. He told his father he was following a fence line, crossing fields, moving confidently toward town. He said he was going to walk into Lind and meet us at the bar there, even though it was closed, Brian recounted. He sounded so sure of where he was. The call continued for 47 minutes in total, a conversation filled with confusion, periodic frustration, but no apparent fear. Or Brandon described crossing a stream or small river, likely the Yellow Medicine River, though he didn't identify it as such. He mentioned barbed wire fences, fields, and other rural landmarks that could have been almost anywhere in the agricultural landscape. Cell phone records would later reveal a shocking truth. Brandon wasn't anywhere near Lind. Tower data placed his phone near the town of Porter, approximately 25 miles north of where he thought he was. This massive discrepancy in location remains one of the case's most perplexing aspects. Law enforcement investigators who later worked the case explained, "It's hard to understand how someone could be so disoriented about their location, especially on roads they knew well. We've considered every possibility from intoxication to medical episodes to deliberate deception, but none fully explains the level of geographic confusion." According to toxicology estimates based on witness accounts of his alcohol consumption at the gathering, Brandon would likely have had a low blood alcohol content by the time of the incident, possibly under the legal limit, though this cannot be confirmed without medical evidence. At approximately 2:41 a.m., as the call approached the 47-minute mark, something changed dramatically. Brandon, who had been calmly conversing with his father throughout this lengthy call, suddenly exclaimed, "Oh shit!" Then the line went dead. Brian immediately called back. The call went straight to voicemail. He called again and again with the same result. Something had happened. But what? "That oh shit haunts me every day," Brian later told reporters, his voice breaking. Was it surprise? Fear? Did he fall? Was someone there? It wasn't like he was screaming in terror, but something clearly happened. And then, nothing. The family's concern escalated rapidly. What had been a frustrating situation now took on a more ominous tone. Brian and Annette continued searching the Lind area for hours before returning home to wait, hoping Brandon would simply walk through the door. By morning, with no sign of their son, the Swansons contacted law enforcement. The initial response was measured. After all, Brandon was an adult who had only been out of contact for a few hours. But as the day progressed with no word from Brandon, a more formal search began. Later that day, searchers located Brandon's Chevrolet Lumina. It wasn't near Lind at all, but rather off County Road 15 near Porter, consistent with the cell phone tower data. The car was simply off the road, not severely damaged, with the keys missing. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, nothing to indicate foul play. The car simply sat there, abandoned in the rural landscape. Technical analysis of the cell phone call provided additional insights. The final "oh shit" and call termination occurred when Brandon was likely near the Yellow Medicine River, based on tower triangulation and his own descriptions of his surroundings. This river, though not especially large, features steep banks in places and was running high due to spring rain. Cell phone engineers who analyzed the data explained, "The signal terminated suddenly, not gradually as you might expect if the battery died. This suggests either the phone was damaged, switched off, or entered an area with no coverage whatsoever." Investigators have proposed several theories about what might have happened in that final moment. 1. Brandon may have fallen into the Yellow Medicine River, explaining both the exclamation and the immediate phone disconnection. 2. He might have encountered a person or animal that startled him. 3. He could have suddenly realized his extreme disorientation, causing momentary panic. 4. He may have fallen into an abandoned well or other rural hazard not visible at night. The sheriff who led the initial investigation summarized the challenge. "We have the beginning of the story, Brandon driving home. We have the middle, his call to his parents. But we don't have the end. That final moment, whatever happened after oh shit, remains the missing piece that we've never been able to recover." What makes the case particularly unusual is the extended duration of contact immediately preceding the disappearance. Few missing persons cases feature such lengthy documentation of the person's final moments. The 47-minute call provides exceptional detail, yet somehow makes the mystery deeper rather than resolving it. The night of May 13th to 14th, 2008, began with a celebration of academic achievement and ended with a baffling disappearance that would launch years of searching, legislative change, and unanswered questions. Somewhere in the darkness between Porter and Lind, Minnesota, Brandon Swanson vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the echo of his final words. As first light broke over the Minnesota countryside on May 14th, no one yet realized that one of the state's most enduring mysteries had just begun. The Swanson family had endured a sleepless night, their calls to Brandon's phone going unanswered, their growing fear deepening with each passing hour. By 7 a.m., Brian and Annette Swanson formally reported their son missing to the Lyon County Sheriff's Department. The responding officers took detailed statements about the strange series of events from the previous night: the 1:54 a.m. call, the 47-minute conversation, the confusion over Brandon's location, and the final disturbing "oh shit" before the call abruptly ended. In the words of the deputies assigned to the case, "Initially, we approached it as we would any case involving a young adult who hasn't been home overnight," Landers later explained. "We've handled many situations where someone stays with a friend or has car trouble. But as the Swansons described the phone call and Brandon's disorientation, we quickly realized this wasn't a typical missing persons report." What caught our attention immediately was the discrepancy in location, the officers explained. Someone thinking they're near Lind when they're actually near Porter, that's not a minor navigational error. That's approximately 25 miles of difference. Something unusual had happened to this young man. The first priority was locating Brandon's vehicle. Officers from Lyon County coordinated with neighboring Yellow Medicine County, dividing the vast rural territory between them. Given the cell phone tower data pointing to the Porter area, search teams focused their initial efforts there rather than near Lind, where Brandon believed himself to be. At approximately 12:30 p.m. on May 14th, a Yellow Medicine County deputy located Brandon's 1994 Chevrolet Lumina. The vehicle sat abandoned off County Road 15, not far from Porter. The car was approximately 2 miles north of the Yellow Medicine River, in an area of sparse population and vast agricultural fields. The vehicle itself offered few clues. The Lumina was simply off the road, not severely damaged, with no signs of collision. The keys were missing, presumed to be with Brandon. There was no blood or signs of struggle inside the vehicle or in its immediate vicinity. Brandon's wallet was not in the car, suggesting he had it with him when he left the vehicle. The gas tank was nearly empty, which may explain why Brandon had pulled over, though this remains speculative. The sheriff assessed the scene personally. The car appeared to have been driven off the road rather than forced off by collision, he noted. It wasn't deeply stuck. A tow truck removed it easily. In daylight, most drivers would have been able to get this vehicle back on the road with minimal effort. The discovery of the vehicle transformed the search parameters. A formal search and rescue operation was launched immediately, focusing on a radius around the abandoned car and extending toward the Yellow Medicine River, based on Brandon's phone call description of crossing water. By 2 p.m. on May 14th, less than 12 hours after Brandon's final communication, the operation had grown substantially. Deputies from both Lyon and Yellow Medicine counties, volunteer firefighters from several towns, and emergency management personnel established a command post near where the car was found. Minnesota State Patrol helicopters were dispatched to provide aerial surveillance of the area. The helicopters utilized infrared technology to detect any heat signatures that might indicate a person on the ground. Despite excellent flying conditions, the aerial search revealed nothing unusual in the target zone. Weather conditions on May 14th presented both advantages and challenges for searchers. The day was clear and mild, with temperatures reaching the mid-60s, favorable conditions for a ground search. However, the previous night had seen temperatures drop into the mid-40s. If Brandon had been outdoors and immobile during those hours, hypothermia would have been a serious concern. The terrain itself posed significant search challenges. Southwestern Minnesota's landscape features vast agricultural fields interspersed with drainage ditches, small creeks, and occasional wooded areas along waterways. In mid-May, newly planted crops were just beginning to emerge, while other fields lay recently tilled. The Yellow Medicine River, running west to east through the search area, was flowing higher than normal due to spring rains. The search coordinator described the complications. We were dealing with literally thousands of acres of open land. In some ways, this is more challenging than a forest search, because the landscape seems so open. Yet there are countless places where someone could be hidden from view. Drainage ditches, culverts, small depressions in the land. A person could be 50 feet from a searcher and completely invisible if they're lying in a ditch. As the afternoon progressed, the search methodology evolved. Teams conducted grid searches of the immediate area around the vehicle, expanding outward in concentric circles. Other teams focused specifically on the Yellow Medicine River and its banks, given Brandon's description of crossing water during his phone call. K-9 units were brought in from Minneapolis, arriving by late afternoon. These specially trained dogs attempted to pick up Brandon's scent from items provided by his parents. Though the dogs showed interest in several directions, no definitive trail was established, a common challenge when a significant time has elapsed between disappearance and search commencement. Throughout this initial day, the Swanson family experienced the particular agony of parents whose child is missing. They remained at the command post, providing information, answering the same questions repeatedly for different officers, and waiting desperately for news. Annette Swanson later described these hours. It's a pain like nothing else, watching all these people searching for your child. You're grateful beyond words for their help, but each passing hour without news is torture. You can't eat, can't think clearly, You just exist in this terrible state of suspension between hope and fear. Brian Swanson added, I kept replaying that phone call in my mind, trying to extract some clue I might have missed. Should I have told him to stay with his car? Could I have somehow pinpointed his location better? The what-ifs are endless and merciless. The Swansons were not passive participants in the search. Brian joined several ground teams throughout the day, retracing the routes he had driven the night before while searching for his son. Both parents provided detailed information about Brandon's habits, health, and the contents of the phone call, any detail that might help guide searchers. By early evening on May 14th, approximately 100 people were actively involved in the search operation. As darkness approached, difficult decisions had to be made about continuing overnight. While some operations can effectively utilize darkness, the vast open terrain and potential water hazards made nighttime searching both dangerous for rescuers and potentially less effective. The sheriff explained the decision. We maintained a scaled-back operation overnight with spotlights and thermal imaging along the river and main roadways, but the full-scale ground search was temporarily suspended until first light. This is standard protocol. We need to ensure the safety of our search personnel while maximizing our effectiveness. As the first day of searching concluded without any sign of Brandon, investigators began developing various theories about what might have happened. These initial hypotheses included accidental drowning in the Yellow Medicine River, possibly explaining the sudden "oh shit" and call termination, disorientation leading to extended wandering and exposure to elements, injury from a fall or other accident, rendering him unable to call for help, encounter with wildlife that might have startled him, possible third-party involvement, though no evidence supported this initially. Detectives summarized the investigative approach. In cases like this, we follow every possible thread simultaneously. We don't focus exclusively on the most likely scenario because we can't be certain what's most likely. We have to consider every possibility, from the mundane to the unlikely. Meanwhile, news of Brandon's disappearance spread rapidly through the tight-knit communities of southwestern Minnesota. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By nightfall on May 14th, local restaurants were delivering food to the command post. Neighbors of the Swansons were caring for their home. Churches organized prayer vigils. In Marshall, Brandon's hometown, his former high school teachers and classmates began organizing additional volunteer searchers for the next day. Local businesses printed flyers with Brandon's photograph and description, which volunteers posted throughout the region. The community coordinator described the mobilization. This is what rural communities do. We come together when one of our own is in trouble. Everyone knew the Swansons, or knew someone who knew them. Brandon was one of our kids, and we were going to find him. Local media arrived at the scene by late afternoon, and by the evening news broadcasts, Brandon's story was being shared across Minnesota. The unusual circumstances, particularly the 47-minute phone call and mysterious final words, captured public attention immediately. As the first day of the search concluded, Brandon had been missing for approximately 18 hours. His car had been found, but not a single additional trace of him had been discovered. No footprints, no personal items, nothing to indicate his direction of travel after leaving the vehicle. The command post remained active throughout the night, with officers following up on the first wave of tips that began coming in after the media coverage. Most of these initial tips would prove unhelpful. Reported sightings that didn't match the timeline, general theories without specific information, and well-meaning but vague suggestions. At the Swanson home in Marshall, family friends maintained a presence, answering the home phone which was kept open in case Brandon should call. His bedroom remained exactly as he had left it the previous morning. Textbooks on the desk, a half-empty bottle of water on the nightstand, clothes laid out for the next day. As the first night of organized searching gave way to dawn on May 15th, no one involved could have anticipated that days would turn to weeks, weeks to months, and months to years. All without answering the fundamental question. What happened to Brandon Swanson after his phone went silent? The first 24 hours had passed without a single clue beyond the abandoned car, an ominous sign in a missing persons case. where typically the earliest hours are the most likely to yield results. For the Swansons and the entire search operation, this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey into uncertainty. As the sun rose on May 15, 2008, marking the beginning of the second full day of searching for Brandon Swanson, the operation expanded dramatically. What had begun as a localized effort around an abandoned vehicle was now transforming into one of the largest search operations in southwestern Minnesota's history. By 6 a.m., search coordinators had assembled a growing group of volunteers and professionals, outlining the expanded strategy for the day. The search radius would now extend to 5 miles from where Brandon's vehicle was found, encompassing approximately 50,000 acres of terrain, primarily agricultural land interspersed with drainage systems and natural waterways. Priority zones remained the path between the vehicle and the Yellow Medicine River, as well as the river itself. By mid-morning on May 15th, more than 200 searchers were actively involved in the operation. The search area had been divided into grids with teams assigned to specific sectors. Each team carried radios, GPS units, and followed standardized protocols for marking searched areas and documenting potential evidence. Minnesota Department of Natural Resources conservation officers joined the effort, bringing specialized knowledge of the local landscape and waterways. Their expertise proved valuable in identifying areas where a disoriented person might seek shelter, or where natural hazards might pose particular dangers. The Yellow Medicine River became a central focus of the search. Based on Brandon's phone conversation with his father, investigators believed he had crossed the river at some point during his walk. The river was running about 2 feet higher than normal due to spring rainfall, creating strong currents in certain sections. In this area, the riverbanks can be steep and unstable, with drops of 6 to 10 feet in places. Specialized water search teams deployed along an 8-mile stretch of the Yellow Medicine River. Using inflatable boats, they methodically examined both banks and the water itself. Underwater cameras were employed in deeper sections and areas with reduced visibility. While water teams focused on the river, ground teams combed the surrounding farmland. The terrain presented unique challenges. In mid-May, some fields were freshly planted, while others remained untilled. Visibility across open areas was excellent, but the landscape's subtle contours created countless blind spots, where a person could be completely hidden from view. Search teams used a grid pattern with searchers spaced approximately 10 feet apart, moving in straight lines across fields. Each person was responsible for thoroughly examining their corridor, paying particular attention to ditches, culverts, abandoned farm equipment, anywhere a person might seek shelter or fall and become hidden from view. As the search expanded, so did the array of specialized K9 units. In addition to traditional tracking dogs, cadaver dogs specially trained to detect human remains were brought in from Minneapolis and St. Paul. Though the introduction of these dogs marked a somber shift in the operation's tone, search coordinators emphasized that this was standard protocol, not an indication they believed Brandon was deceased. Ground-penetrating radar was employed in areas of interest, capable of detecting anomalies beneath the soil surface. Sonar equipment was used extensively along the deeper sections of the Yellow Medicine River. Law enforcement officials emphasized that no technology was spared in the effort to find Brandon. If a tool existed that might help locate him, they deployed it. Cost was never a consideration. This was about bringing a young man home to his family. By the end of the first week, the search had covered approximately 75% of the primary target zone, a remarkable achievement given the vast territory involved. Yet despite the intensity of the effort and the technology employed, not a single conclusive piece of evidence had been found. No clothing, no wallet, no keys, no sign of Brandon Swanson. As the operation continued into its second week, the weather began to complicate efforts. Late May brought thunderstorms to southwestern Minnesota, temporarily halting aerial searches and making ground operations more difficult and dangerous. The Yellow Medicine River rose another foot, further challenging the water search teams and potentially obscuring evidence along the banks. Search coordinators adjusted their methodologies daily based on conditions, researching key areas after significant weather events. The understanding was that rain could wash away evidence, but it could also reveal items by moving soil or vegetation. The changing landscape itself presented additional challenges. As May progressed into June, vegetation grew rapidly across the search area. Fields that had been clearly visible in mid-May were now obscured by growing crops. Grasses along the river banks and in uncultivated areas grew taller, potentially concealing evidence that might have been visible earlier. Agricultural activities also impacted the search. Farmers necessarily continued their seasonal work, altering parts of the landscape through planting, tilling, and other normal farming operations. Search teams worked closely with local farmers to document which areas had been modified and how these changes might affect search efforts. Throughout this period, community support remained unwavering. Local residents opened their homes to out-of-town searchers. Restaurants provided meals around the clock. Churches established rotation schedules to ensure that someone was always praying for Brandon and for those searching for him. The volunteer participation was extraordinary. People took time off work, driving from across Minnesota and neighboring states to join the search. Many had no connection to the Swanson family, but were moved by the mysterious circumstances of Brandon's disappearance. At the peak of the operation, nearly 500 people were involved in the search for Brandon Swanson. Managing this many volunteers required careful organization, ensuring everyone was properly briefed, assigned appropriate tasks, and accounted for at the end of each day. As weeks passed, the psychological toll on everyone involved became increasingly evident. For search professionals, the lack of results despite enormous effort created frustration and a sense of failure, though they remained outwardly optimistic and determined. For the Swanson family, the emotional journey was excruciating. Hope and despair alternated in cruel cycles. Each day without news was both a disappointment and, paradoxically, a reason to continue hoping. No news meant no confirmation of their worst fears. In public statements, Brandon's parents described the painful limbo they found themselves in. The not knowing created a unique form of torture, where their minds created every possible scenario, from the hopeful to the unbearable. They found themselves bargaining with the universe, just wanting to know what happened to their son, even if it was the worst news imaginable, just to end the uncertainty. A month had now passed, and difficult decisions had to be made about the scale and nature of the search operation. While the active, daily search involving hundreds of people could not be sustained indefinitely, authorities were clear that the case remained open and a priority. Law enforcement announced the transition. After 30 days of intensive searching covering more than 100,000 acres by foot, air, and water, they would adjust their approach. Daily large-scale operations would be scaled back, but targeted searches would continue based on new information or leads. The investigation remained active and would continue until Brandon was found. This transition marked the beginning of a new phase in the search for Brandon Swanson. Large groups of volunteers were replaced by specialized teams focusing on specific areas of interest. New technologies were deployed as they became available. Seasonal changes to the landscape prompted periodic re-examination of previously searched territories. In July 2008, dogs indicated interest in an area approximately 1.5 miles northwest of where Brandon's car was found. This area, featuring thick brush and a small seasonal pond, had been searched previously, but was revisited with greater intensity. The search team brought in specialized equipment to drain portions of the pond and conducted an inch-by-inch examination of the surrounding area. The dogs were clearly alerting on something, but despite exhaustive efforts, searchers couldn't identify what had triggered their interest. By late summer, the physical search had covered virtually every accessible acre within a 7-mile radius of Brandon's abandoned vehicle. The Yellow Medicine River had been examined repeatedly along a 12-mile stretch. Abandoned buildings, wells, drainage systems, and other potential hazards had been methodically checked and documented. Experienced search and rescue personnel involved in the case noted that they had never seen an operation this extensive for a single missing person. The combination of professional resources, volunteer commitment, and technological assets was extraordinary. That they found no definitive evidence despite this effort made the case uniquely perplexing. As fall approached, bringing cooler temperatures and the harvest season, search methodologies adapted once again. The clearing of crop fields provided new opportunities to examine areas that had been obscured by vegetation during the summer months. Hunters entering wooded areas and river valleys were briefed on what to look for and how to report potential evidence. Mental health professionals continued working with the Swanson family as they navigated this new reality. This meant helping the family understand that continuing to live their lives, returning to work, maintaining routines, was not abandoning Brandon, but was necessary for their survival during this extended ordeal. The search for Brandon Swanson became not just an operation, but an ongoing part of life in southwestern Minnesota. Yellow ribbons appeared on trees and mailboxes throughout the region, silent reminders of the young man still missing. His story was told and retold, keeping public awareness alive and generating occasional new tips and leads. After 6 months, search coordinators faced a sobering reality. This case was redefining what they understood about missing persons. With modern technology, cell phone data, and the extensive resources deployed, it seemed impossible that a person could simply vanish without a trace. Yet that's exactly what had happened. Brandon Swanson had walked into the Minnesota night and somehow disappeared completely. In the midst of their unimaginable grief and ongoing search for answers, the Swanson family channeled their pain into purpose. Brian and Annette Swanson began to recognize a critical gap in Minnesota's response to missing persons cases, one that had directly affected the search for their son. When Brandon first went missing in May 2008, his parents encountered a systemic obstacle that shocked them. Because Brandon was 19 years old, legally an adult, some law enforcement agencies initially hesitated to immediately launch a full-scale search operation. Though local authorities in Yellow Medicine County had responded promptly, the Swansons learned that many other families of missing adults faced significant delays in getting official search efforts underway. This revelation came as Brandon's parents spoke with other families of missing persons throughout Minnesota. They discovered a troubling pattern. Law enforcement agencies sometimes waited 24, 48, or even 72 hours before fully mobilizing resources to search for missing adults, operating under an outdated assumption that adults who disappear likely do so voluntarily. We learned that critical time was often lost in these cases, Brian Swanson explained in public testimony. The first 24 hours are crucial in any missing person case. Every hour that passes makes the search more difficult and reduces the chances of finding the person alive. For the Swansons, this realization sparked a mission that would eventually change Minnesota law. In late 2008, while still actively searching for their son, they began working with state legislators to draft a bill that would eliminate waiting periods for missing persons cases, regardless of age. State Representative Marty Seifert and State Senator Dennis Frederickson became key allies in this effort, helping to craft legislation that would eventually become known as Brandon's Law. The bill aimed to require law enforcement agencies to take immediate action when any person is reported missing under dangerous circumstances, regardless of age. The Swansons traveled repeatedly to the Minnesota State Capitol in St. Paul, meeting with lawmakers and sharing Brandon's story. In testimony before legislative committees, they described the agonizing uncertainty they continued to face and explained how immediate search response might help other families avoid similar pain. No family should have to wait while precious hours slip away. Annette Swanson testified before a House committee. When someone disappears under unusual circumstances, every minute counts. Brandon's case shows that even young, healthy adults can find themselves in life-threatening situations that require immediate response. The proposed legislation contains several key provisions. 1. Law enforcement agencies would be required to accept missing persons reports without delay. 2. Police would be mandated to immediately conduct a preliminary investigation when someone is reported missing under dangerous circumstances. 3. The 24-hour waiting period for entering adult missing persons into the national database would be eliminated. 4. Information about missing adults would be shared with other jurisdictions promptly, rather than after an arbitrary waiting period. As the bill moved through legislative committees in early 2009, the Swansons continued their dual mission, searching for Brandon while advocating for changes that would help other families. They attended every hearing, sometimes driving to the Capitol directly from search sites in southwestern Minnesota. Law enforcement representatives, including sheriffs and police chiefs from across the state, largely supported the proposed changes. Many testified that they already followed these practices as a matter of policy, but acknowledged the importance of codifying them into law to ensure consistent response statewide. On May 7, 2009, almost exactly 1 year after Brandon's disappearance, the Minnesota House of Representatives passed the bill unanimously. The Senate followed with its own unanimous approval 5 days later. On May 21, 2009, Governor Tim Pawlenty signed Brandon's Law in a ceremony attended by the Swanson family. The law, officially titled Minnesota Missing Persons Act, but commonly known as Brandon's Law, took effect July 1, 2009. It represented a significant shift in how missing adults cases would be handled in Minnesota, eliminating arbitrary waiting periods and ensuring prompt response for all missing persons regardless of age. The passage of Brandon's Law transformed Minnesota's approach to missing persons cases. Before the law, police departments often waited 24 hours or longer before initiating searches for missing adults. Within the first year of implementation, the impact was already apparent. Minnesota law enforcement agencies reported faster response times for missing persons cases and improved coordination between jurisdictions. The elimination of waiting periods meant that critical early hours were no longer lost while families waited for official action. For the Swanson family, the law represented both a personal victory and a profound legacy for their son. While the search for Brandon continued without resolution, his disappearance had led to systemic changes that would help other families in similar circumstances. "We couldn't bring Brandon home," Brian Swanson said at a commemoration of the law's passage, "but we could make sure other families had a better chance at finding their loved ones. That's what Brandon would have wanted." The impact of Brandon's Law extended beyond Minnesota. Advocates for missing persons in other states began citing Minnesota's approach as a model for legislative reform. Several states, including Wisconsin and Iowa, considered similar measures in the years following the passage of Brandon's Law. Missing persons organizations nationwide praised the legislation as an example of best practices in missing persons response. The elimination of arbitrary waiting periods was recognized as particularly significant, acknowledging the reality that adults can find themselves in dangerous situations, requiring immediate action just as children can. Law enforcement training in Minnesota evolved to incorporate the requirements of Brandon's Law. Officers received specific guidance on assessing dangerous circumstances that would trigger immediate investigation, including missing under mental or physical health concerns, missing in severe weather conditions, disappearance inconsistent with established patterns, suspicion that disappearance may be involuntary, belief person may be in danger based on circumstances. This training helps standardize response across different agencies and jurisdictions, ensuring consistent application of the law throughout the state. For the Swansons, advocacy for Brandon's Law became a channel for their grief, a way to create meaning from their ongoing tragedy. While continuing to search for Brandon and cope with his absence, they found purpose in knowing that other families would benefit from faster, more effective responses to missing persons reports. "Nothing will ever fill the hole in our hearts," Annette Swanson told reporters at the 1-year anniversary of the law's implementation. "But knowing that Brandon's disappearance has led to changes that may save other lives gives us some comfort in our darkest moments." The implementation of Brandon's Law represented a significant shift in how missing persons cases are understood. Rather than assuming adults who disappear do so voluntarily, the law recognized that adults can face dangers requiring immediate response, whether from accidents, medical emergencies, criminal activity, or environmental hazards. Law enforcement officials who worked on Brandon's case have cited the law as one of its most important outcomes. While the mystery of what happened to Brandon Swanson remains unsolved, his case fundamentally changed how Minnesota, and increasingly other states, respond to reports of missing adults. Brandon's Law stands as a testament to how a family's advocacy can transform tragedy into meaningful change. From the mysterious disappearance of a 19-year-old college student emerged legislation that has potentially saved lives and certainly provided other families with faster, more effective responses in their moments of crisis. As one state senator remarked during debate on the bill, "This law won't bring Brandon home to his family, but it ensures that his disappearance will have lasting meaning for our state and for countless families who will never know how much they owe to a young man they never met." Brandon Swanson's legacy now extends far beyond his too brief life, embodied in a law that bears his name and changes the fate of other missing persons throughout Minnesota and beyond. Through Brandon's Law, a young man who vanished without a trace continues to make his presence felt in the improved chances that others might be found. More than 17 years have passed since Brandon Swanson vanished into the night of rural Minnesota. The fields have been planted and harvested 17 times. The Yellow Medicine River has frozen and thawed through 17 winters and springs. Technologies have advanced, investigators have come and gone, but the fundamental questions remain unanswered. What happened to Brandon Swanson after his phone went silent? This question haunts not only his family, but everyone who has been involved in the search over the years. It represents one of the most perplexing modern disappearances, a case with substantial initial information that somehow led nowhere. We know Brandon left a gathering in Canby, Minnesota on May 13, 2008, after celebrating the end of his first year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. We know his car was found abandoned near Porter, Minnesota, approximately 25 miles from where he believed himself to be. We know he spoke to his father for 47 minutes, describing his surroundings and his attempt to walk toward what he thought were the lights of Lind. We know what his final words were before the call abruptly ended at approximately 2:41 a.m. on May 14, 2008. And then, nothing. Despite one of the most extensive searches in Minnesota history, covering thousands of acres with hundreds of personnel, utilizing increasingly sophisticated technology, not a single additional trace of Brandon Swanson has ever been found. No clothing, no wallet, no keys, no physical remains. Nothing to indicate what transpired in those moments after his final words. For Brandon's parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, the years have brought a painful evolution in their relationship with uncertainty. In recent interviews, they have spoken with remarkable candor about living in the space between hope and acceptance. "You never stop being the parent of a missing child," Annette Swanson reflected in a recent statement. "Time doesn't change that fundamental reality. What changes is how you carry it, how you learn to incorporate this unanswered question into your continuing life." Brian Swanson added, "In the early years, we lived in a state of constant anticipation, always expecting the phone to ring with news, always waiting for that one breakthrough. Eventually, you realize that you can't sustain that level of suspended animation. You have to find a way to move forward while still honoring your commitment to finding answers." The Swansons have demonstrated remarkable resilience in transforming their personal tragedy into positive action. Beyond their successful advocacy for Brandon's Law, they remain active in missing persons networks, supporting other families navigating similar uncertainty and advocating for continued improvements in how these cases are handled. Brandon's story didn't end on May 14, 2008, Annette stated during a recent anniversary event. It continues through Brandon's Law, through the improvements in how missing persons cases are handled, through the support we try to provide to other families. We couldn't bring Brandon home, but we could ensure his life continues to have meaning and impact. Law enforcement officials confirm that Brandon's case remains open and will never be closed until answers are found. While active, large-scale searches now occur less frequently. The investigation continues in other forms: periodic reviews of the evidence, application of new technologies as they become available, and follow-up on any new information that emerges. This case changed how we think about missing persons investigations, stated a Yellow Medicine County Sheriff's Office spokesperson. It demonstrated both the extraordinary capabilities of modern search techniques and their limitations. We learned that despite our best efforts, some questions remain unanswered. But that doesn't mean we stop trying to answer them. The possibility of resolution remains, even after all these years. Cold cases are solved with surprising frequency, often through unexpected developments. New witnesses sometimes come forward years or even decades after an incident, finally sharing information they previously withheld. For anyone with information about Brandon Swanson's disappearance, the message from both law enforcement and his family remains consistent. It is never too late to come forward. Even details that might seem insignificant could provide the connection that finally resolves this enduring mystery. If you know something, if you saw something, if you heard something, Please come forward, Brian Swanson urged in a recent public appeal. We're not looking for someone to blame. We just want to know what happened to our son. The Yellow Medicine River continues its patient journey through the Minnesota countryside, carrying whatever secrets it may hold about that night in May 2008. The fields around Porter and Lind continue their seasonal cycles, the landscape gradually changing as years pass. The rural roads Brandon traveled that night remain much as they were, stretching through the darkness between small towns. For those who have followed Brandon's case over the years, investigators, volunteers, community members, and countless others touched by his story, the mystery carries a profound message about the fragility of human certainty. Despite all our technology, despite our confidence in our ability to find answers, some questions remain beyond our reach. Brandon's case reminds us of our limitations, reflected one longtime investigator who has worked the case since the beginning. In an age when we can track phones within meters, when cameras are everywhere, when it seems like privacy has vanished, somehow, a 19-year-old college student can still vanish without a trace. It's a humbling reminder of how vast our world remains, despite our attempts to map and monitor every corner of it. For Brandon's friends, now in their 30s with careers and families, his absence remains a constant reminder of life's unpredictability. Former classmates describe the strange sensation of moving forward through life's milestones, while Brandon remains forever 19, forever on that dark road between Porter and Lind. When we get together, there's always a moment when someone mentions Brandon, said one former classmate. It's like time freezes briefly. We all wonder what he would be doing now, who he would have become. And then there's that unanswerable question. What happened that night? June 20th of 2019, emergency services receive a call from a worried dad.
Yeah, I'd like to get, if possible, have a wellness check done on my daughter. I've been trying to get a hold of her all week. I was just wondering if I could have somebody maybe go by her house and check on her.
The last they heard from her was a simple text message. Landed. Love you, Mama. Just ordinary words that meant everything was fine. Except it wasn't. That message from Mackenzie Lueck to her mother would be the last trace of her before she vanished in Salt Lake City Park at 3 a.m. What happened in the hours that followed would shock a nation. Before we continue, this video contains descriptions of violence and murder that some viewers may find disturbing. This case involves real people and real tragedy. The details are presented with respect for Mackenzie and her loved ones. Viewer discretion is advised. In the summer of 2019, Salt Lake City was known for its mountain views, vibrant community, and the University of Utah campus bustling with students pursuing their dreams. Among them was Mackenzie Lueck. At 23 years old, Mackenzie was in the prime of her life. A kinesiology major with aspirations of becoming a nurse, she balanced her rigorous studies with an active social life as a member of Alpha Chi Omega sorority. Friends described her as confident, outgoing, and always ready with a smile. She loved animals and volunteered at local hospitals, already preparing for the healthcare career she envisioned for herself. Born and raised in El Segundo, California, Mackenzie had made Utah her second home. She was close with her family, calling her mother regularly and maintaining strong ties despite the distance. Her Instagram account showed a young woman enjoying college life, hiking in Utah's scenic landscapes, celebrating with friends, and documenting her journey through nursing school. But on June 17, 2019, everything changed. What began as a routine return trip from her grandmother's funeral in California would spiral into one of the most shocking crimes in recent Salt Lake City history. The case would unfold over an agonizing 11-day period, from her mysterious disappearance to the devastating discovery in Logan Canyon. Mackenzie Lueck was born on January 17, 1996, in El Segundo, California, a small beach community near Los Angeles. Growing up in the sunshine of Southern California, she developed an early love for the outdoors, animals, and active pursuits that would shape her interests throughout her life. Her childhood home in El Segundo was where Mackenzie formed the foundation of who she would become. Friends from her early years described her as bright and sociable, someone who made connections easily and maintained them with loyalty. She attended El Segundo High School, where she was a cheerleader, an activity that showcased her natural enthusiasm and team spirit. Those who knew Mackenzie during these formative years noted her compassion, particularly toward animals. She volunteered at local animal shelters and dreamed of one day working in a field where she could help others. This calling towards service would eventually lead her to nursing. After graduating from high school in 2014, Mackenzie made the decision to attend the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The move represented her independent spirit, choosing to venture away from home to a new state where she could forge her own path. Her parents, Greg and Diana Lueck, supported her decision while maintaining the close relationship that had defined their family. At Utah, Mackenzie declared her major in kinesiology, the study of human movement, with plans to pursue nursing. Classmates remembered her as focused and determined in her studies, approaching her coursework with the same dedication she brought to everything in her life. Beyond academics, Mackenzie embraced college life fully. In 2017, she joined Alpha Chi Omega sorority, finding a second family among her sisters. Ashley Fine, one of her sorority sisters who would later become instrumental in raising awareness about her disappearance, described Mackenzie as outgoing, loving, and always there for you. Kennedy Stoner, another close friend from her sorority, shared similar sentiments. She was the kind of person who would reach out if she knew you were having a bad day. She remembered details about your life and followed up. That's just who Kenzie was. By the spring of 2019, Mackenzie was thriving at the University of Utah. At 23, she was approaching her senior year, looking forward to completing her degree and beginning her career in nursing. She had built a rich life in Salt Lake City, a strong academic foundation, a circle of close friends, and involvement in community activities. Those who knew her described a young woman with purpose and direction, someone who approached life with enthusiasm and genuine warmth. She was, by all accounts, exactly where she wanted to be, until an unexpected family event would bring her back to California temporarily in June 2019, setting in motion the chain of events that would lead to her disappearance. In early June 2019, Mackenzie Lueck received the kind of news that pulls anyone away from their regular routine. Her grandmother had passed away. Despite being in the middle of her summer studies at the University of Utah, Mackenzie immediately made arrangements to return to California for the funeral. Family had always been a priority for her. On June 10, 2019, Mackenzie flew from Salt Lake City to El Segundo, California. The days that followed were filled with the solemn activities that accompany loss: funeral preparations, family gatherings, and the collective mourning process. Throughout this difficult time, Mackenzie provided support to her parents, Greg and Diana, and other family members. Even in grief, those around her noted her strength and compassion. After spending a week with her family, Mackenzie prepared to return to Salt Lake City. She had commitments to keep: summer classes, her part-time job, and the life she had built in Utah. On Sunday, June 16, 2019, Mackenzie said goodbye to her family, not knowing it would be for the last time. Her return flight to Salt Lake City was scheduled for late evening. According to airline records, Mackenzie boarded Delta Airlines Flight 1313 at Los Angeles International Airport. The flight departed on time at 10 p.m. Pacific Time, beginning the approximately 2-hour journey to Salt Lake City International Airport. The plane touched down at Salt Lake City International Airport at 1:13 a.m. Mountain Time, now Monday, June 17, 2019. Airport security cameras captured Mackenzie's movements through the terminal. The footage, which would later become crucial evidence, showed her wearing a white hooded sweatshirt and black pants. She rolled her carry-on luggage behind her as she made her way through the airport, her appearance giving no indication of what was to come. This ordinary airport scene, a tired traveler returning from a trip, would later be scrutinized by investigators and broadcast across news channels nationwide. After collecting her luggage, Mackenzie took out her phone. At 1:35 a.m., she texted her mother, "Landed. Love you, Mama." Phone records would later show that Mackenzie then ordered a Lyft. The rideshare application matched her with a driver who arrived at the airport pickup zone shortly thereafter. According to statements later provided to police, the driver picked up Mackenzie at approximately 2 a.m. During the ride, nothing seemed unusual. The driver later reported that Mackenzie appeared calm and did not seem distressed. She wasn't particularly talkative during the journey, not surprising given the late hour and the fact that she had just returned from a funeral. What was unusual, however, was her destination. Instead of directing the driver to her apartment near campus, Mackenzie requested to be taken to Hatch Park in North Salt Lake, about 20 minutes from the airport. This municipal park, located in a residential area, would seem an unusual destination for anyone at 3 a.m., let alone a young woman returning from a trip. The Lyft driver arrived at Hatch Park at approximately 2:59 a.m. Security footage from nearby homes and businesses would later confirm the timing. The park was dark and empty at that hour, except for one vehicle that appeared to be waiting in the parking lot. According to the driver's statement to police, Mackenzie collected her luggage and approached another vehicle in the parking lot. The driver noted that she did not appear distressed or hesitant as she walked toward the waiting car. After ensuring his passenger had reached what appeared to be her intended destination, the Lyft driver continued on his way, becoming the last known person to see Mackenzie alive under normal circumstances. Who was waiting for Mackenzie in that parking lot? Why had she arranged such a meeting at 3 a.m.? These questions would drive the investigation in the days to come. The Lyft driver's account would provide critical information. The car in the parking lot appeared to be a dark-colored model. Mackenzie approached it willingly, showing no signs of fear or hesitation. She had her luggage with her, suggesting she intended to go somewhere else after the meeting. And most importantly, this meeting appeared to have been prearranged, not a random encounter. As dawn broke over Salt Lake City on Monday, June 17th, Mackenzie's roommates expected her to return to their shared apartment. When she didn't arrive that day, they initially assumed she might have stayed with friends or family after her trip. It wasn't until she missed scheduled activities and failed to respond to messages that concern began to grow. Those final moments in Hatch Park, captured partially through witness testimony and later pieced together through digital evidence, would become the focus of intense scrutiny. The ordinary actions of arranging a ride, sending a text, and meeting someone would take on extraordinary significance as the last known movements of Mackenzie Lueck. As Monday slowly turned into Tuesday, June 18th, Mackenzie's absence began to register with those closest to her. Her roommates, who initially weren't alarmed when she didn't return home immediately after her flight, started to wonder about her whereabouts. Mackenzie was known for being reliable and communicative. When she didn't respond to text messages throughout Tuesday, the first whispers of concern began to circulate among her friends. By Wednesday, June 19th, the concern had deepened significantly. Mackenzie had now missed several days of classes at the University of Utah, unusual for a student known for her dedication to her studies. What's more, she hadn't shown up for a scheduled midterm exam, something entirely out of character for her. Her roommates began reaching out to mutual friends, checking if anyone had heard from or seen Mackenzie. Ashley Fine, one of Mackenzie's sorority sisters from Alpha Chi Omega, received a call from a concerned friend asking if she had heard from Mackenzie. She hadn't. Ashley immediately tried calling and texting Mackenzie, but received no response. The calls went straight to voicemail, suggesting Mackenzie's phone was either turned off or no longer functioning. Kennedy Stoner, another close friend, experienced similar silence when attempting to reach out. As the sorority sisters compared notes, they realized no one in their circle had heard from Mackenzie since before her return flight to Salt Lake City. By Thursday, June 20th, the alarm bells were ringing loudly. 3 days of silence from someone as communicative as Mackenzie was unprecedented. Her friends contacted Mackenzie's parents in California, who confirmed they hadn't heard from their daughter since her brief text message upon landing early Monday morning. That same day, Mackenzie's father, Greg Lueck, contacted the Salt Lake City Police Department to file a missing person report. Given that Mackenzie was an adult who had seemingly disappeared without immediate signs of foul play, the initial police response followed standard protocols. They began by checking hospitals and jails, routine first steps when an adult goes missing, but found no trace of Mackenzie. The police then visited Mackenzie's apartment near the University of Utah campus. Her roommates confirmed she hadn't been home since before her trip to California. Her car was still parked at her residence, eliminated the possibility she had driven somewhere. Her personal belongings, apart from what she had taken to California, remained untouched in her room. Detective Tim Doubt of the Salt Lake City Police Department was assigned as the lead investigator on the case. In his initial assessment, he acknowledged the concerning circumstances, but noted there was no immediate evidence of foul play. At this time, we don't have any evidence that any harm has come to her, he told reporters in an early statement. That's why we're still treating this as a missing person investigation. While police began their formal investigation, Mackenzie's friends launched their own efforts to find her. Ashley Fine, Kennedy Stoner, and other sorority sisters organized a grassroots search campaign. They created missing person flyers featuring Mackenzie's photo, description, and contact information for the police. Together, they canvassed Salt Lake City, distributing flyers in neighborhoods, businesses, and public spaces. The friends also leveraged social media, creating the hashtag #Find Mackenzie Lueck to spread awareness. Posts about Mackenzie's disappearance quickly gained traction, first locally in Utah and then nationally as media outlets began picking up the story. Ashley Fine appeared in several local news interviews, pleading for information about her friend's whereabouts. She's not someone that would go off the grid, Ashley told reporters, her voice breaking with emotion. She's a very dedicated student. She's a dedicated friend. She would not just leave. She has a family that cares about her. Kennedy Stoner echoed these sentiments in her own media appearances. This is not like her. She would not just disappear without telling anybody. As the search intensified, police investigators began digging deeper into Mackenzie's digital footprint. They obtained records from her cell phone provider, tracking the last known location of her device. These records would prove crucial to the investigation, showing that her phone had pinged near Hatch Park in North Salt Lake at around 3 a.m. on Monday, corroborating the Lyft driver's account. The Lyft driver who had transported Mackenzie from the airport to Hatch Park came forward immediately when contacted by police. He provided detailed information about the ride, including the exact time and location of the drop-off. He described Mackenzie's demeanor as calm and normal, with no signs of distress. Most significantly, he mentioned seeing her approach another vehicle in the park's parking lot, suggesting a pre-arranged meeting. Lyft as a company also cooperated fully with the investigation, providing trip data that confirmed Mackenzie had been picked up at the airport at 2:01 a.m. and dropped off at Hatch Park at 2:59 a.m. This timeline was consistent with airport security footage showing Mackenzie leaving the terminal shortly after landing. By Friday, June 21st, Detective Doubt held a press conference to update the public on the investigation. He confirmed that Mackenzie had been dropped off at Hatch Park by a Lyft driver and appeared to have willingly met someone there. At this time, there is no evidence that any harm has come to her, Doubt said. However, because of the circumstances of the case, We want to make sure that she is all right. Police also revealed they had been trying to contact Mackenzie through various means, but had received no response. Her phone appeared to be turned off, and there had been no activity on her social media accounts or financial records since her disappearance. The weekend of June 22nd to 23rd saw the search efforts expand. Mackenzie's friends organized search parties that combed through areas around Hatch Park and other locations in Salt Lake City. Volunteers distributed thousands of flyers. Local businesses displayed Mackenzie's photo, and the University of Utah community rallied to spread awareness. Meanwhile, police investigators continued their methodical work behind the scenes. They interviewed Mackenzie's friends, classmates, and acquaintances. They reviewed her phone records, text messages, and social media communications. They examined her computer and online accounts, looking for any clues about who she might have been meeting at Hatch Park. On Monday, June 24th, 1 week after Mackenzie's disappearance, Detective Doubt held another press conference. This time, he provided more specific details about the investigation, including a description of the vehicle Mackenzie had approached in the park, a dark-colored sedan. He also made a public appeal directly to Mackenzie. Mackenzie, in the case you just want to be left alone, please let us know you're safe. This statement reflected the cautious approach police were taking. Without evidence of a crime, they had to consider the possibility that Mackenzie had chosen to disappear voluntarily. However, those who knew her best remained adamant this was not the case. She would never do this to her family, Ashley Fine told reporters after the police press conference. She would never do this to her friends. Something is wrong, and we need to find her. The investigation into Mackenzie Lueck's disappearance entered its second week, and Salt Lake City police detectives intensified their examination of her digital footprint. In today's world, our electronic devices create a virtual map of our lives, where we go, who we communicate with, and what we search for online. For investigators, this digital trail would prove invaluable. Detectives obtained warrants for Mackenzie's phone records, social media accounts, and email communications. They meticulously reviewed text messages, call logs, app usage, and location data from the days and weeks leading up to her disappearance. This painstaking work revealed something significant. Mackenzie had been communicating with someone through her dating apps and text messages. The messages showed that Mackenzie had connected with a man named Ayoola Ajayi. Their conversations had begun on a dating app and eventually moved to text messages. The content of these exchanges suggested they had arranged to meet when she returned from California. The timing and location aligned perfectly with her mysterious late-night trip to Hatch Park. Investigators traced the phone number and online profiles to Ajayi, a 31-year-old tech worker living in Salt Lake City's Fair Park neighborhood. As they built a profile of this person of interest, several facts emerged about him. Ajayi worked as an information technology specialist for various companies in the Salt Lake City area. He had studied at Utah State University, but had not completed his degree. Online, he presented himself as an aspiring model and actor with professional headshots on various portfolio websites. Perhaps most intriguingly, Ajayi was a self-published author. In 2018, he had released a crime novel titled Forge Identity, which described the burning of a human body. This detail would later take on a chilling significance as the investigation progressed. With Ajayi identified as a person of interest, detectives needed to establish whether Mackenzie had actually met him the night she disappeared. Here, modern technology provided crucial evidence. Cell phone location data showed that both Mackenzie's and Ajayi's phones had been at Hatch Park at approximately 3 a.m. on June 17th. After that meeting, both phones traveled to Ajayi's residence at 547 North 1000 West in Salt Lake City. Most tellingly, Mackenzie's phone powered off at that location and never came back online. Her final digital footprint placed her at the home of a man she had apparently just met. Armed with this information, police began surveillance of Ajayi and his property on June 24th. They observed his movements and gathered additional evidence before making direct contact. During this surveillance period, they spoke with Ajayi's neighbors about any unusual activity they might have witnessed in the days following Mackenzie's disappearance. What these neighbors reported sent the investigation in an alarming direction. Multiple residents on Ajayi Street recalled seeing him burning something in his backyard on June 17th and 18th, the days immediately following Mackenzie's disappearance. One neighbor, Teresa Draheim, later told reporters she had noticed a strong burning smell coming from Ajayi's yard. "It was terrible," she said. "It smelled like burning flesh." At the time, she had assumed it was a barbecue, though she found the timing odd, around 2 a.m.
The smell of gas was outrageous. And I thought maybe I was in my bedroom and I smelled it through my window, and I thought maybe it was my motorhome. And so I came outside to make sure, and there's this smell in the air that was just almost rancid. It was just really disgusting.
Another neighbor, Tom Chamomile, reported seeing Ajayi using gasoline to fuel a fire in a pit in his backyard. The fire was so large that it damaged a nearby fence and some foliage. Chamomile said Ajayi apologized for the smoke and mentioned he was burning landscaping materials. These witness accounts, combined with the digital evidence placing Mackenzie at Ajayi's home, prompted investigators to take the next step. On June 26th, 9 days after Mackenzie disappeared, they executed a search warrant at Ajayi's residence. The scene that unfolded at 547 North 1000 West that day would confirm investigators' worst fears. In the backyard, forensic technicians focused on the fire pit that neighbors had described. Using specialized techniques to recover evidence from burned materials, they made a devastating discovery: charred human tissue. Investigators also found several personal items that appeared to belong to Mackenzie, including a burned cell phone and remnants of personal effects. Inside the house, luminol testing, which detects traces of blood even after cleaning attempts, revealed evidence in multiple areas. Meanwhile, digital forensics experts examined Ajayi's devices. His internet search history revealed queries about how to dispose of a body, how to destroy DNA evidence, and how fire affects human remains. These searches had been conducted in the hours after Mackenzie was last seen. The evidence from Ajayi's home was sent to the state crime lab for expedited testing. Within 48 hours, DNA analysis confirmed what investigators feared. The human tissue recovered from the backyard fire pit matched Mackenzie Lueck's genetic profile. Further analysis of cell phone records revealed more details about Mackenzie and Ajayi's communication. They had exchanged multiple messages in the days leading up to her return to Salt Lake City. The conversations suggested Ajayi had specifically requested to meet her at Hatch Park at that unusual hour, claiming privacy concerns. Investigators also discovered that Ajayi had purchased multiple items that raised suspicion in the days before meeting Mackenzie. Store receipts and surveillance footage showed him buying gasoline, lighter fluid, and a disposable phone at various locations throughout Salt Lake City. On June 27th, police interviewed Ajayi. Initially, he denied knowing Mackenzie or having any contact with her. When confronted with evidence of their digital communications, he changed his story, acknowledging they had texted, but claiming they never met in person. As investigators presented more evidence placing Mackenzie at his home, Ajayi requested an attorney and the interview concluded. The digital trail had led investigators from a missing person case to a homicide investigation. What began as an examination of text messages and app communications had uncovered a calculated act of violence. The electronic breadcrumbs Mackenzie left behind, location data from her phone, communication records, app usage, had spoken for her when she no longer could. On June 28th, just 11 days after Mackenzie disappeared, Salt Lake City Police Chief Mike Brown announced at a somber press conference that they had made an arrest in the case. Ayoola Ajayi was taken into custody and charged with aggravated murder, aggravated kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and desecration of a human body. "This is one of the most difficult phone calls I've ever made," Chief Brown said, describing how he informed Mackenzie's parents of the arrest. "We are devastated and heartbroken by this news." The digital trail had led to an arrest, but one critical question remained. Where was Mackenzie's body? Despite the evidence recovered from Ajayi's property, investigators believed he had moved her remains from the initial burn site. The search for Mackenzie Lueck was not over. During questioning, Ajayi refused to provide information about what happened to Mackenzie or where her body might be found. However, investigators had another resource at their disposal: Ajayi's cell phone data. Analysis of his phone's location history showed that on June 25th, just days after Mackenzie's disappearance, Ajayi had traveled to Logan Canyon, a rugged area approximately 85 miles north of Salt Lake City. This remote location, filled with dense forest and steep terrain, became the focus of a new search effort. On July 3, 2019, a large contingent of law enforcement officers from multiple agencies began a coordinated search of Logan Canyon. Using the cell phone data to narrow their focus to specific areas, teams of officers, search dogs, and forensic specialists combed through the difficult terrain. In a densely wooded area off Highway 89, near mile marker 395, searchers made the discovery they had been dreading. Partially buried in a shallow grave, covered with dirt and debris, were Mackenzie's remains. Her body had been bound with zip ties, and the medical examiner would later determine she had died from blunt force trauma to the head. The scene was processed with extreme care, with investigators documenting every detail and collecting additional evidence. This included soil samples, tire impressions from the roadside, and various items that appeared to have been discarded near the burial site. The discovery in Logan Canyon provided crucial physical evidence beyond what had been found at Ajayi's residence. Forensic analysis would later reveal Mackenzie's blood on a shoe belonging to Ajayi. DNA evidence recovered from the burial site also linked him directly to the crime. The path to justice for Mackenzie Lueck began on July 1, 2019, when Salt Lake County District Attorney Sim Gill formally filed charges against Ayoola Ajayi. The severity of the allegations reflected the calculated nature of the crime: aggravated murder, a capital offense in Utah; aggravated kidnapping, a first-degree felony; obstruction of justice; and desecration of a human body. At the initial court appearance on July 15, 2019, Ajayi appeared via video from the Salt Lake County Jail. Judge Vernice Treese read the charges while family members of Mackenzie watched from the courtroom gallery, their faces etched with grief. No bail was granted due to the gravity of the charges and Ajayi's status as a flight risk with connections outside the United States. The prosecution team, led by District Attorney Gill, began assembling their case. It included the digital evidence that had first led investigators to Ajayi, the communications between him and Mackenzie, arranging their meeting at Hatch Park, the cell phone location data placing them both at his residence, and his searches related to body disposal. Forensic evidence provided compelling physical links to the crime. DNA analysis confirmed that blood found in Ajayi's home matched Mackenzie. Soil samples from his shoes corresponded to the earth at the Logan Canyon burial site. The medical examiner's report detailed the blunt force trauma that caused her death, consistent with an injury from a weapon recovered at Ajayi's home. Throughout the fall of 2019 and into 2020, the case moved through the pretrial phase. Court hearings addressed evidence admissibility, witness testimony, and procedural matters. The COVID-19 pandemic slowed the judicial process, delaying proceedings as courts adjusted to new safety protocols. By October 2020, 16 months after Mackenzie's murder, the prosecution and defense had entered negotiations regarding a potential plea agreement. On October 7, 2020, Ajayi appeared in court and pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and desecration of a human body. In exchange for this plea, prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty. As part of the plea, Ajayi acknowledged the facts of the case. He admitted that he had planned to kill Mackenzie before they met, that he had struck her with a blunt object when she tried to leave his home, and that he had burned her body in his backyard before relocating her remains to Logan Canyon. The hearing for sentencing took place on October 23, 2020, at the Matheson Courthouse in Salt Lake City. Judge Vernice Treese presided over the court. District Attorney Sim Gill addressed the court, outlining the methodical nature of the crime and the extensive efforts to conceal it. "This was a case that shocked our community to its core," Gill stated. "The defendant's actions demonstrated a calculated plan to take a young woman's life and then methodically attempt to erase any evidence of her existence." The lead detective from the Salt Lake City Police Department provided testimony about the investigation, emphasizing the digital trail that had led them to Ajayi and the forensic evidence that connected him to the murder. He described the devastating scene at the Logan Canyon burial site and the impact the case had on the investigators who worked tirelessly to find Mackenzie. Then came the most powerful moments of the hearing, the victim impact statements from Mackenzie's family. Her parents, Greg and Diana Lueck, approached the podium to address the court and the man who had taken their daughter's life. Greg Lueck spoke first, his voice occasionally breaking with emotion. "I had the opportunity to be Mackenzie's father for 23 years, he said. "She was a Spitfire, and she had a world of opportunities ahead of her. Now, all I have left are memories and her ashes in an urn." Diana Lueck followed, holding a framed photograph of her daughter. "There is no justice in this," she said through tears. "We will never get to see our Kenzie again. We will never get to hear her laugh or see her beautiful smile. We will never get to see her fulfill her dream of becoming a nurse and helping others." Mackenzie's brother also delivered a statement describing the void left in their family and the ongoing trauma they experienced, knowing the violent way their loved one had died. Throughout these statements, Ajayi sat motionless, staring straight ahead, showing no visible reaction to the pain expressed by Mackenzie's family. When it was time for Judge Treese to deliver the sentence, she addressed the gravity of the crime. "This was a heinous act that demands the most severe punishment our system allows," she stated. She then sentenced Ajayi to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the aggravated murder charge, with additional consecutive sentences for the other charges. As the sentencing concluded, District Attorney Gill spoke to the media outside the courthouse. "While nothing can bring Mackenzie back to her family, we hope that this resolution provides some measure of justice," he said. "The defendant will spend the rest of his life in prison with no possibility of ever being released." Salt Lake City Police Chief Mike Brown acknowledged the tireless work of the investigators. "This case touched all of us deeply," he said. "I want to recognize the dedicated professionals who worked day and night to find Mackenzie and to build this case." The University of Utah held a memorial service where professors and classmates spoke about Mackenzie's dedication to her studies and her positive presence on campus. Her academic advisor noted that she had been on track to graduate with honors and had already been researching graduate nursing programs. While the judicial system had delivered its verdict and imposed its punishment, the true measure of justice for Mackenzie would be found in how her memory was honored and how her story might prevent similar tragedies in the future. Campus safety programs expanded their focus on dating app safety and meeting strangers. Rideshare companies enhanced their safety features and educational campaigns. For Mackenzie's parents, family, and friends, the conclusion of the legal case did not mark an end to their grief, but rather the beginning of a different phase of their journey, learning to live with an absence that could never be filled, while keeping alive the memory of a young woman whose life, though cut tragically short, had touched so many others.
If you found this story compelling, if it stayed with you the way it stayed with so many of us over the years, then consider subscribing to Murder and Mystery HQ. We're building a community of thoughtful listeners, critical minds, and those who refuse to let unsolved cases fade into silence. We upload new true crime stories every day, cases that remain unanswered, stories that deserve attention, and mysteries that just might find resolution with the help of viewers like you. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and join the conversation in the comments. What you think, what you know, could make a difference. And if you know someone who shares your fascination with the unexplained, share this video, send it to a friend, discuss it, debate it. These aren't just stories, these are people, and remembering them is how we keep their stories alive. Thank you for watching Murder and Mystery HQ. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, some truths are only waiting for the right eyes to find them. Until next time on Murder and Mystery HQ, stay safe if you can.